Because of this huge beam that runs as a support all the way from the tongue to about, I don't know, maybe another 6-8 feet from the front of the nose of the trailer, it's not allowing me to put a traditional mounted black tank here. So I've had actually to cut this hole out here, which is the size of my black tank, 17 gallons. It's going to drop in here, and then I'm going to create another set of brackets in here for the tank to sit on, and then I'm going to apply with that. And this will be our step up into our bathroom. So I have the framing done for the black water holding tank, which will eventually be an access panel. And so if I ever have any problems with this thing, I can not have to rip up my whole floor, but just over the top of where the black tank is. And the lip on these tanks is about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a hair more. It's got these little beads on the corners, but I'll just measure down on the inside of this lip a quarter of an inch, and attach a 1x2, glue it, screw it, and the subfloor will just barely be 1/8 inch or so above top of that black water tank. 3/4 inch decking, hopefully shouldn't sag, put no pressure on the tank. All right, I'll get to it. Just creating a line for my 1x2s. It's about 3/8 of an inch. So with the subfloor temporarily in place, I'm getting measurements for my toilet flange here by measuring 10 to about 10.5 inches off the wall to the center of where the toilet flange and the grommet will be for the black tank. I got this measurement by setting the toilet in place and then tracing the front, or actually the entire outer edge of the base of the toilet, and then turned the toilet over and got my measurements from there, found my center point, and then traced this the grommet there as well. So I'll be using a drill here to with just a regular drill bit to get a pilot hole that will go straight through the subfloor, and my black tank is in place underneath this, and with them both together I'll be able to, with just one drill bit, just one hole, now I'll have them both lined up exactly together, and then I'm going to remove the black tank now and put the subfloor back into place where I'm going to cut the hole out for the toilet flange. I'm just using a drill bit here to cut some relief holes for the jigsaw blade so that I can cut this hole out quickly. The video is sped up, of course, a bit, otherwise this would take hours to show you everything. So here I'm just test fitting the toilet flange, making sure that it fits good. A little bit of play is good. And then this grommet here that will go into the black tank, I'm going to use the center part of that to trace with like a silver marker onto the black tank itself. I got my black tank grommet. Right inside the hole, I've got my black tank is mounted temporarily with a few screws just to make sure it doesn't move on me. I've got this silver marker. I'm just going to trace the inside of that. So from this outer ring, got almost a half of an inch of play. So if I could just maybe take off an extra 1/8 inch or so, and I'll be able to flex this grommet to stick it down into place and silicone that in place. So I've just drilled a starter pilot hole here, and I'm going to attempt to cut it out with my jigsaw. Not sure what to expect. Just going to take it slow. Go. So I gotta take that back out, seal it with 5200, and then let it sit overnight. I just want to dry test it, make sure that toilet's gonna fit on there like it's supposed to. After trying to test fit the flange, the inlet side of the flange tube was too long for my application, so here I'm just measuring it. I think I'm cutting off about almost an inch of the total length in order to be able to push it all the way into the grommet sleeve and then be able to attach it with screws like it should be. After cutting the flange down to the right length and test fitting it, now drilling a pilot hole again through the subfloor with a hole saw kit for the 1.5 inch grommet that will be installed in the black tank that I'm going to use for my vent hose. And I'm not doing a traditional straight up out the ceiling vent pipe. I'm actually using a flex hose, as you'll see throughout the build. Here I'm using a razor blade just to clean up the edges of the hole for the vent grommet to make sure that when it's in place and I've got the silicone on it that it's going to seal correctly. Don't want any sharp edges on that plastic. It does get hot when you're cutting it with the jigsaw or even a hole saw kit, and it causes the edges to kind of curl up a little bit. So take just a minute and use something sharp, such as a file, razor blade. You can use even really coarse sandpaper. After the grommets have both been test fitted and I know everything's going to line up correctly, I'm getting ready to permanently install them. First, I'm using sandpaper to roughen up that smooth plastic edge, giving the silicone a good surface to stick to. Before the silicone goes on, I'm also cleaning it with rubbing alcohol to get any of that fine dust and debris off of those off the surfaces. Same thing with the grommets. The groove that runs down the center there is where your silicone's going to go, so you want to make sure those are clean as well. The silicone I'm using for this application is made by 3M. It's called 5200, and it's a marine application. It's made for underwater applications. It's super sticky, very strong. It lasts a long time, and I'm just lining the outer edges of both the holes. And once that's done, I'll do the same thing to both grommets and that groove that runs right down the center. I'm being very generous and pushing as much as I can in there. Don't be afraid to get it all over the place. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to hurt anything. The more the merrier. The last thing you want is for your black tank to have some kind of leak on the inside of your RV. Once you get it into place, you want to give it about 1/4 of a turn to make sure that it's evenly distributed and covers all the surface area. 5200 is kind of expensive, so if you use it for one project and you have some left over, a good tip is to stick it in a like a freezer Ziploc bag and wrap it up real good and put it in your freezer right after you're done using it, and it'll last for about 6 months in your freezer. Just spreading it here in that groove on the larger grommet. Once it's in there, just kind of sandwich it to make sure it just sticks all to everything. Like I said, you can't really use too much of this stuff. It doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to work. Another tip is once you get that grommet installed, you can put your hand kind of on the inside of the grommet and push out to all edges to make sure that there's no kinks or rolls or anything like that in that rubber. And then once again, give it that 1/4 turn. And you want to let this sit up for a good 12 hours. I just let it sit up overnight before I do anything further with it. Here's a look at the black tank from the underside, and you can see where I have attached the ABS black plastic drain piping to the tank and then run it all the way out to the dump tube connections. And simply using plumber strapping, I just made sure that there is a slight or gradual drop from one end to the other, and let gravity do its work as you try and dump these things. But I probably went a little bit overboard on the strapping, but I wanted it to be super strong and secure, and so far it's worked great. We haven't had any problems with it. I wanted to originally connect the gray and the black together, but I did not do that. It was just really tough because this trailer is so low to the ground, and I didn't want the dump connections hanging too much lower than they already were, so I decided to go with individual disconnects there for that. And then here I'm going to eventually come back in with some spray foam whenever I get to that point, and I'm going to fill in any gaps so that there's no place for critters to crawl up in through. and then maybe eventually here I'll add some straps. Here's a look at the toilet installed with the flooring also in there, and you can see where the black hose vent sticks up behind the toilet and how I ran it. If you'd like to see a video on the process of how I did that, make sure to subscribe, as I'll be uploading some footage of that here shortly. Thank you.